We would like to call this meeting of the Amarillo City Council to order, and I will pass this now to Richard Brown.
We'll also call to order the meeting of the Local Government Corporation. Quorum being present, we'll proceed. And by agreement, the LGC and the council are going to defer to a moderator, and Gary Pitner will assume that role today. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. It's a high-paying job, too, I'll have you know. I got a bottle of water for this. So, good morning. Welcome. It's good to see so many people here on this item that is of great interest in our city. Thank you, Mayor Harpole and President Brown, and good morning, Council and LGC members. We are gathered here today as a community to exchange thoughts about our community, which we all, I know, love and care for so very much. You know, great communities don't just happen by accident. They happen because of bold visions, intentional planning, hard work, a willingness to invest, the ability to work together, and strong leadership. Those folks who have come before us in Amarillo have certainly possessed those kind of attributes. They were people of pride, people of vision, people of purpose, people of integrity, and they weren't timid about their intent to build a great city out here on the prairie of West Texas. To remind me on just about a daily basis of that positive kind of mindset and attitudes of endless opportunities that those early day Amarilloans had, I keep in my desk a copy, and I really don't remember how I ended up with this, but it's a copy of a publication from 1907 entitled Amarillo, Texas. It appears as though to me it was a Chamber of Commerce related publication that was likely printed by one of the newspapers that existed back then. But just reading some of the words, I think you get kind of the mindset of the attitudes of those that established this community 130 or so years ago. And with your indulgence, I'd like to read a few of these sentences. This is a 20-page booklet. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in the history of Amarillo, getting a hold of it. Just listen to some of these words. The Texas Panhandle is indeed an empire within itself. Amarillo is not only the metropolis of the Panhandle, but is the queen city of the plains. The whole truth is she is a financial, commercial, and educational center of the Panhandle, the richest spot taken as a whole in the entire Southwest. The city has a population of 14,000 and is rapidly growing. Her growth, in fact, is so rapid yet substantial that her enterprising citizens are puzzled to know what to do to provide for public improvements. So great is the demand for additional schoolrooms, water mains, etc. The city is the hub around which the Great Panhandle moves and has its being. The city offers the investor in land, town lots, or business enterprises many flattering inducements because of her unexcelled resources. She is also a modern city of beautiful homes and excellent schools, churches, and good society. Find this interesting. A $150,000 packing plant is the city's newest enterprise and will soon be under construction. It was secured at a recent enthusiastic meeting of Amarillo's loyal and progressive citizens who contributed $75,000 in support of that institution. And I did the math on that. If you apply CPI to that $75,000, that would equate to about $2 million in today's dollars. So incentives have been around for a long time in Amarillo, Texas. This goes on to say, Amarillo is an excellent type of what a modern city should be, and because of its attractiveness, delightful climate, and business advantages, the city is being filled with handsome homes and imposing commercial and banking structures. There are an electric light plant, gas plant with 14 miles of mains, local and long-distance telephone, sewer systems, an electric railway with 8 miles of heavy track, and 17 miles of concrete sidewalk. The city has an efficient fire department and police force. It is also important to mention that Amarillo is the county seat of Potter County. The new Grand Opera House, which will be open for this season, is a structure of magnificent proportions, comparing favorably with the leading theaters across the country, and a building in which this city is very proud. That's what they were thinking, and that was the mindset back in 1907. And, you know, the decisions and the investments which these folks made in our community back then clearly impact who we are today. And just as the decisions that we make today will surely impact the kind of city we will have tomorrow. I guess what I'm simply trying to say is that we have serious business to attend to as citizens of Amarillo, Texas in 2015. Business which will shape this community's future. This is not a sporting event or a political gamesmanship exercise. This is about real responsibility and real consequences. Mayor, Mr. Brown, members of the City Council and the LGC Board, on behalf of the 190,000 of us who reside in this city, we want to thank all of you around this table for your willingness to step into leadership roles in 2015. And although it's probably not necessary, the script calls for introductions, so I would like to ask that the folks around the table introduce themselves and maybe tell us how long they've been here. Melissa?
My name is Melissa Daly, and I'm Executive Director of Downtown Amarillo, Inc., and I have been here for 6 years since the inception of DAI.
Good morning. My name is John Lutz. I grew up in Amarillo, from here. I've served with DAI for about the last 3 years. I'm currently the chair and was recently appointed to the LGC. Thank you all for being here.
Mercy Murguia, Potter County Commissioner, Precinct 2. Been in Amarillo my entire life, and specifically Precinct 2. Thank you for being here.
Lilia Escajeda, member of the LGC Board, prior City Council member, and I've been in Amarillo since 1976 and very active in the community.
Randy Burkett, I'm a city councilman, place 3. I moved back to Amarillo about 30 years, but grew up here and look forward to serving on the city council.
Good morning. My name is Elisha Demerson, and I was born here and have lived here all of my life. But I would prefer to say that my dad came here in 1924, so we too are a lifelong family from here in Amarillo. I serve on the Amarillo City Council, place 1.
Paul Harpo, Mayor of Amarillo. It's great to see everyone here, so many involved people in our city, as many other meetings in the past have been. So thank you for being here. I've been in Amarillo since 1982 and had a Ford and Hyundai dealership here for many years. I served on the council for a 2-year period, 5-6, got off for a period of 4 years, ran for mayor, and I'm beginning my 3rd term as mayor. Thank you again for being here today.
Richard Brown, currently serving as the president of the LGC. I've been involved in Center City activities for a long time in multiple roles and multiple entities, and I've been here in Amarillo since 1958.
Les Simpson, my day job is publisher of the Amarillo Globe News, but in addition to that, I've been on the LGC as well as part of DAI and served as its chairman from its inception, and before that was part of the initial downtown redevelopment committee that started and developed the strategic plan, and I've been here 13 years.
I'm Mark Nair. I've been in Amarillo 22 years. About 19 hours of that have been in my new gig here at Place 4 for the City Council.
Brian Eads. I was also here since 1958, Mr. Brown, but of course that was the year I was born. I have been on the City Council for 8 years and am also a designated member of the Local Government Corporation.
Good morning. I'm Marcus Norris. I'm the Amarillo City Attorney. I've lived in Amarillo 15 years. Been practicing law 30 years, 22 in municipal law as my area of my focus.
Thank you. And I'm Jared Atkinson, City Manager, and I've been here since kindergarten, but I'm not sure I could call the year.
Good morning. I'm Frances Hibbs. I'm the City Secretary. I've been employed with the City of Amarillo for 25 years.
Can we thank these people for their service? Okay, now let's talk a little bit about what to expect as we move through the day. we're going to ask everyone to be very patient because it is going to be a long day. The morning will be filled, as will the first half of the afternoon, with presentations regarding the downtown development matter. A lot of folks have been involved. A lot of work has been undertaken, and I know everyone will do their very best to be as concise as we possibly can be, but there are a lot of moving parts, and everyone needs to understand how those parts move and how the dots are connected. So we will spend a good deal of time today learning and sharing together. Then this afternoon, we expect, although don't hold me to it, about 3 or 3:30 or so, the opportunity for this group to hear comments from the public, comments and questions. There will be some ground rules, and we'll go over those ground rules this afternoon. I will say, though, that we will be taking written questions and written comments, and that's a pretty efficient way for that to happen, and I suspect that those answers to those questions will be posted on some organization's website around this table. There are comment cards, question cards, and I hope pens and pencils back in the back. So I would encourage you, if you have questions during the course of the morning session as you're hearing with us the presentations, please take the opportunity to ask those questions in writing, and you'll get an answer. Okay. We want everyone to be on equal footing in terms of how we arrived at this point. So we will be hearing those presentations. The first round of presenters will include Beth Duke, Sam Lovelady, Scott Bentley, and Chan Davidson. That will occur between now and lunch. Then we will break for lunch. The panel up here will be served lunch here. We'll have probably about a 30-minute lunch break, and then upon the conclusion of lunch, we will reconvene the public session and continue. Right after lunch, we'll gear up and hear presentations from Dr. Paul Matney, from Frida Powell, Sherman Bass, Dan Quant, David Hudson, Bob Garrett, and Chuck Patel. If we have time, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and hear about the dollars and the cents and the economic development aspects of the projects and how the money works and how the projects will be supported financially. And then maybe another break if we have time, and then around probably 2:45 or 3 o'clock, Richard Brown, chair of the Local Government Corporation, will speak to the role of the LGC. And by then, we will all be fully educated, right? Understand all the facts, back and forth, forwards and backwards. As a reminder to the LGC members and the City Council, this is a duly posted public meeting with all of the requirements that such have, and you're all familiar with those. Discussions amongst yourselves regarding today's business needs to only take place around this table and in an open manner. So no discussions amongst your respective peers in the corners, in the corridors, or in the restrooms for that matter, okay? Any questions about what we're going to be doing today from the council or the LGC board? Okay. We will get underway. Our first presenter will be Beth Duke. Beth is the long-term executive director of Center City, an organization. Well, she'll tell you the story. An organization's been around for a lot of years. Beth is actually the third executive director of Center City. The first was a young lady named Julie John Cox, followed by Penelope Davies. Many of you know Penelope, and Beth has been in the position for a good number of years. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have the clicker? Just a technical detail. Thank you. Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the LGC, I want to thank you so much for letting me come this morning and be part of this presentation. Center City has a great, amazing history in our downtown, and I'm so excited to share that with you. Many of you know the history because you were right there when it started, but I want the community to know how long we've been working on this. And I want to apologize a little bit ahead of time. When I leave, as I will, and then come back, it is only to have high noon and serve lunch to 700 of my closest friends at the Potter County Courthouse. But I'll be back. So thank you again for having me today, and I will be back later if there's questions or things I can answer. Center City of Amarillo is a nonprofit organization. We've been working on improving downtown since 1990. It's amazing how far back we go. Let's see. Oops. That one. Side button. How's that? No? There. Okay. In 1990, a group of about 60 Amarilloans, led by some of the people in this room, Richard Brown, Richard Ware, Betty Howell, one of my great mentors, took action to try to save our historic downtown. Amarillo's downtown was in decline. Let's see if I can make that happen. Here we go. Amarillo's downtown was in decline, as were downtowns across our country. It wasn't just us. It was several downtowns. And you know, if you travel, you've seen this trend. Well, three big things happened that really contributed to the decline of our downtown. The first thing that happened was when Amarillo lost Amarillo Air Force Base. This was a major setback for our city. It was a big blow. We lost that huge Air Force Base payroll, and it changed the way our city grew. Up to that time, our city had been growing to the north and the east. Well, now all of a sudden, the growth shifted to the south and the west. So that was a big blow for our city. The second thing that happened that was tragic was the burning of downtown Amarillo High School. And when that old high school burned, it was devastating to downtown because all of a sudden thousands of students and their families were not coming downtown anymore. And then when the Amarillo Independent School District decided to rebuild, by that time people had shifted to southwest Amarillo, so they built the school where the population was growing. All of a sudden, there was kind of a vacuum in downtown. And then the third thing wasn't unique to Amarillo, but shopping patterns changed. All across the country, people were moving to suburban shopping centers and shopping malls. And you can trace this in Amarillo from downtown to Whifflin Village to Sunset Center to Western Plaza and so forth. It just kind of keeps going west. I tell people we'll be shopping at Cadillac Ranch before long, I guess. But a couple of things kept our downtown strong, and that was that in Texas, some of you may remember, branch banking was not allowed in Texas until about the 80s. So you had to still come downtown to come to the bank. It's one reason we have such great, strong banks downtown. You still had to come downtown to go to the bank. The other thing that kept our downtown very strong, the court system stayed downtown. Our beautiful Potter County Courthouse, the federal courthouse, municipal and state courts, they were all downtown. So what we had was a strong 9-to-5 workforce, but after 5 o'clock, there wasn't anyone who came downtown. Working downtown in the 70s, if you had to find a place to park after 5 o'clock, it was no problem. You could park anywhere. A group of concerned citizens then decided it was time to save our historic buildings, save our downtown, and nobody else was going to do it if we didn't do it ourselves. They realized we had to invite people back downtown, or pretty soon it was just going to be a bunch of parking lots. Center City became a national park. Well, I think I'm out of order here a little bit. Let's see. Forward or backward? There it goes. Forward. There. This group of citizens decided that they needed a plan. And you know, all great projects start with a plan. You've got to put the time into a plan. And what they found was they needed to hire an architectural firm. This was called Helmuth, Obata, and Kassabaum. And this was a downtown plan we now call the HOK plan for short. And they found several important findings out of this plan. Downtown Amarillo was an important symbol for the city and a source of historical pride. Downtown was easy to get to, but once you got there, the area offered few opportunities for dining out and entertainment. And the majority of those surveyed said downtown revitalization was worthy of public support. Center City grew out of that plan. That's our old logo for those of you who remember that. Center City got started, and Center City was able to do several things. We started the gateway projects. We raised the money for those, which are still standing. We started the block party, which will have its 20th year this August. We started High Noon on the Square, which has grown and grown. Electric Light Parade. We started the Hoof Prints program with 102 of those fiberglass horses with the Great American Quarter Horse Association. And we also raised money to help put the Rick Husband statue at the Civic Center where all citizens could enjoy it. Center City started in 1994 and was actually chartered in 1996. But since 1994, we've been part of the city's facade grant program. And I'm so proud because we have been able to improve a lot of buildings, one building at a time. This is a matching reimbursement grant, so any business that gets this help has to put that much money back into it. And many have put a lot more than the required match. So you can see we are close to $900,000 being invested in the facade grant program. And then all of a sudden we kind of put on the brakes. Nothing much happened at Center City. We still had our special events, but nothing was really happening to change downtown Amarillo. So the HOK plan went on the shelf. We had voluntary design guidelines that were beautiful pictures, but nothing happened. Nobody much remembered the HOK plan. And out of that, we decided that it was really time to start over. So in 2005, when I came on staff, the first thing we knew we needed to do was to develop a strategic plan for downtown, because no developers, no investors wanted to talk to us without a plan for downtown. And you know, as business people, without a business plan, you can't really go forward. So to develop the plan, we appointed a downtown task force. Many of you served on that task force. It was a lot of meetings, a lot of research, a lot of study, and the task force met regularly to draft this plan. In 2006, the city convened 5 public meetings, one in each quadrant of the city and a larger one downtown, to ask for input to this plan. It was adopted in March of 2008. And this was the starting point for our new downtown after so many years of nothing happening. Out of that plan, we established the tax increment reinvestment zone because we realized other cities had this development tool and we did not. At the time, and still to this day, we had hoped it would be the first of many tier zones around the city because it's been so important in helping downtown pay for downtown. We established Downtown Amarillo, Inc. We began work on the catalyst projects that would include our dream project, which was a convention center hotel for downtown. Now, Center City has a huge commitment to this project. Over the years, we have raised a lot of money through our special events, and this is selling tickets at Block Party, one at a time, or lunches at High Noon on the Square, one at a time. And we committed $500,000 to the Catalyst project. This is a huge commitment on the part of all of our volunteers and our volunteer board of directors, because this will significantly deplete our reserves. But it shows the commitment, and it also keeps a promise to our community, because we told them we were raising this money to make Amarillo better. Center City is part of the Texas and National Main Street programs, and as such, we're required to report our reinvestment figures in the community. And it's really amazing when you look back since 2007, our last reporting period, we have made such strides in downtown Amarillo. More than $71 million invested in the private sector since 2007. More than $30 million in the public sector. This includes, of course, our beautiful Potter County Courthouse. And more than $18 million in public and private projects. Public and private partnerships include things like the facade grants, and all of those things help invest making downtown better. In addition, we have logged almost 8,000 volunteer hours, and if you multiplied that by the $22 figure that is now given by the National Volunteer Center, that would amount to almost $185,000. So if you've ever volunteered with Center City, whether it's been on our board or selling a ticket at Block Party or any of the million things I've asked you to do, if you would just raise your hand, I think I would like to see that. Thank you. See? Okay. You guys will all be getting a letter to volunteer. It's good. Most business owners have spent far more than the facade grants they were given. I'm so proud of the improvements our small businesses have made in Amarillo. You know, when I started work full-time downtown in the 70s, I think you could have I think there were 3 places to eat. And you could have put them on a business card if my job had had a business card at that time. But now we have a full dining area downtown, more than 30 restaurants, and it is becoming a real cultural area. Capitalizing on the growth of the Civic Center and the Globe News Center venues, downtown is home to everything from graduations and proms to Broadway series, shows, and concerts. The Downtown Courtyard by Marriott has brought thousands of visitors to downtown. It's now on the National Register of Historic Places and has exceeded projections every year since it opened. You may not know this, but it also received a state award from the Texas Downtown Association for beautiful adaptive reuse. So in conclusion, notwithstanding the efforts of everyone involved in Center City, for about 18 years nothing happened. More progress has happened in the last 7 years than in the previous 25 years combined. Center City's volunteer leadership has committed Center City to throw all of its resources behind this project. The $500,000 we've committed represents decades of fundraising, selling lunches and tickets one at a time. Our contract with the Local Government Corporation requires that our funds be spent around the hotel and parking garage, and that if either of these projects do not go forward, Center City would not be constrained to the agreement with the LGC. That's how strongly Center City believes in holding strong to the Downtown Strategic Action Plan that was adopted by our city and the catalyst projects to move downtown forward after so many years. Where we are today represents the work of hundreds of volunteers who believe in downtown and its future. Please keep downtown moving in a forward direction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beth. Any questions of Beth amongst the council here?
Beth, one question. You mentioned that $500,000, a $500,000 grant was committed to the Catalyst project.
Yes, sir.
And so I'd written a question. It was project specific, but only to the, I think you said in your closing, only to the hotel and parking garage. Is that correct?
That's correct. Our commitment was to be that beautiful last piece of the streetscape around those catalyst projects. That Convention Center Hotel has been on our wish list forever. And when I started at Center City 10 years ago this month, that was one of my dreams, is when they ask you in a job interview where you want to be in 10 years, I said I want to be part of that group cutting the ribbon on that great Convention Center Hotel. But our piece is for the streetscape, for the parking garage and the hotel.
And lastly, you mentioned the acronym HOK. What does that
Yeah,
stand
HOK. I'm glad you asked. That is Helmut Obata Kassabaum. It's an architectural firm. I believe the firm still is in operation with some different partners, but it was an architectural firm out of Dallas that they hired to do this plan. And I have a few of these in my office. Do you ever want to just go back and read some? It's amazing. Their vision was beyond what we were thinking about today, and it had some very exciting ideas. We were able to use some of them, but some of them never went forward. But this is what we call the HOK.
Okay, sorry I asked. I couldn't even pronounce, let alone.
I thought you were
spell
just
it.
making me say it again to see if I remembered.
Yeah, so you said that plan though is available for.
Yes, it's not digital, but I do have a few copies in my office, and it's like Gary's publication he was showing. It really is interesting reading to see how things have changed in those 20 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We need to move along, but are there any other questions of Beth? Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation will come from Mr. Sam Lovelady. Sam is going to speak to us regarding that 2008 Strategic Action Plan, which Beth preliminarily spoke to a little bit earlier. Sam is a great member of our community. I can't care to wouldn't be able to count the number of volunteer roles and responsibilities Sam has played in Amarillo, Texas, including a stint as a school board president here. So, Sam, thank you for your ongoing service and commitment to our community, and tell us about the 2008 Strategic Action Plan.
Thank you, Gary. I'm really happy to be here and have a remote control. I'm good at these, but we'll see if I can walk and chew gum at the same time. As Gary said, I'm Sam Lovelady, and after those introductions, I'll apologize in advance that I wasn't wise enough to come to Amarillo. It took me until I was 5 years old to leave Lubbock and come to Amarillo. But since then, I've tried to make it up to the city I love by following the admonition of my Boy Scout leader, who, whenever we'd go camping, his simple instructions were, leave it better than you found it. That's my goal for Amarillo, to leave it better than I found it. I've been a member of the DAI board since 2010 when I was appointed to fill a position left open on the board by the passing of Joe Ted Davidson. I'm a partner in an accounting firm and have office downtown my whole career, but other than that, I have no financial interest in a successful downtown. In fact, I'm a little worried that if these redevelopment efforts are successful, my rent will go up. So I'm hoping my landlord isn't here to hear that. I can tell you with sincerity that I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to speak with you and share what I know about the lengthy and imperfect process that led to this strategic action plan for downtown. I recognize that the city, and I've looked it up, I guess councilors, councilmen, councilpersons, those are all correct, but whichever we choose, I recognize that you all have 1,000 things to worry about, not just downtown. And I further recognize that we're all blessed to call Amarillo home, and all of us want the best for it. We may disagree, and lately we've done a lot of disagreeing on what's best, but that's what's as important is that we all want the best. I'm a CPA, and I did a little math estimating what the councilors are earning per hour. I think it's about 8.5 cents an hour for being here in this meeting today. So I'm really glad you're not subject to Fair Labor Standards Act. I think the DOL might shut us down. I recognize your job as sacrificial, and I thank you for making the sacrifice. For those of you on the LGC board, I recognize that your pay rate is infinitely smaller, like zero, and that you too are making significant investments in this laborious process, and I sincerely thank you. There's some irony in me making this presentation on the planning process, because I was a latecomer to DAI and wasn't a participant in developing the strategic plan. Perhaps like many of you, I followed the process in the newspaper and on television, and I had an interest and awareness of the needs of downtown, so I was paying attention. But recently I've studied the plan and the process, and I'm here to report to you on the plan and what takes place in the process of developing it. Now, as a CPA, I don't expect to have anyone to be excited about hearing me speak, but on a topic as titillating as the strategic action planning process, I think I may have a sense of what it will feel like to be the next Kardashian husband. I know what I'm here to do, I'm just not sure how to make it interesting, but I'll do my best. And like a Kardashian husband, I might ask that you nod occasionally, try to laugh at my jokes, and if all possible, stay awake. I can summarize the 3 simple messages I need to share in just a few words. One, the Downtown Strategic Action Plan, I'm not going to refer to it as the SAP because I don't want to be confused with that acronym, isn't just the work of one blue ribbon committee. It has many contributors from all parts of town in many walks of life. A great number of the citizens have, through numerous public meetings and interviews, had a chance to contribute. Number 2, the plan wasn't half-baked. It was well-researched, well thought out, and forward-looking. And 3, unlike so many business plans I've seen over the years in my business, this one isn't collecting dust on a shelf someplace. It's being implemented. Admittedly, not at a breakneck pace and not without some missteps, but to the credit of our entire city, it's being implemented. As you may know, this wasn't the first, and we've heard mention of plans in the past. The 1989-90 effort that I understand those folks determined they needed some help, hired that professional help, created a really cool 3D model that seems to have been lost to history, had a real sincere vision for downtown and invested $300,000, but ultimately went nowhere. So it's significant that our plan is being implemented. Let's see if I can do it. There we go. Spring forward 15 years, and we see the organization of Blue Ribbon Committee, consisting of 4 past, present, or future mayors, Jerry Hodge, Glenn Parkey, Deborah McCart, and Paul Harpole, the then sitting city commission, business leaders like Richard Ware, Richard Brown, Les Simpson, Frida Powell, many of whom are still involved today, leaders from the nonprofit sector like Laura Street, Doris Alexander, and Clay Stribling, leaders from government like Gary Pitner, Judge Arthur Ware, and then city manager Alan Taylor, young leaders like William Ware, Jason Herrick, and Gabe Irving, and sadly leaders who didn't live to see this effort through to fruition, like Joe Ted Davis, who I mentioned, Davidson, Ed Davis, and Jim Sims. I'm told what set this group apart from past efforts was a bias for action. I love that phrase, a bias for action. I'm told by those who have worked in this arena longer than I that another key element of what I think can be demonstrated is the unprecedented impact of this plan compared to previous ones is that the City Commission, now Council, stayed engaged at a high level in an effort to see the plan move forward. Putting this bias for action, and with the support of the City Commission, this group got to work hiring a consulting firm, Gideon Toll, funded initially by Amarillo National Bank. Gideon Toll was well experienced in these efforts, and they helped organize and focus the group's efforts. They collected data and ultimately put together the Amarillo Strategic Action Plan that we continue to work from 8 or 9 years later. Few things stir a CPA's soul quite like a graph, and the graph on this slide points out why there was concern. While citywide growth in values had increased 102.6% in the 20 years between 1985 and 2006, downtown values in the Tiers area had only grown by 14.6%. Clearly, using property values as a yardstick, there were problems downtown. Think of that. Downtown property values were increasing at 1/7 the rate of the rest of the city. You don't have to be a CPA to see downtown needed life support to survive. A successful effort to raise funds, with the city helping for the last 5% for the $30 million Globe News Center, refocused attention and demonstrated that big dreams could become a reality in downtown Amarillo. There we go. In 2006 and 2007, the consultants helped the committee organize 5 public input meetings in various parts of town. Behind me, you'll see Amarillo Globe News stories pulled from their website, reporting on the meetings to be held. The consultants met with approximately 30 groups around town collecting input. Those groups are listed on the screen, but include everyone from bankers to the Coalition for the Homeless, from Faith City Mission to APD, from the AISD to the Amarillo Citizens Forum. Just suffice it to say they made the rounds. The records reflected the meetings in the Civic Center drew between 70 and 300 people each. In addition to meetings, surveys were distributed, and this allowed the team to gather detailed information. DAI has employed a summer intern, a gifted young UT student named Alan Sanchez. I asked Alan to review records of public meetings since 2006 to give me a sense of just how many opportunities there have been for public input and for gathering information about the process as it developed. He pulled together a list from newspaper archives of the 80 public meetings, including 24 between March 2006, when the task force was ratified, and July 15, 2008, when the DAI board was appointed by the City Commission. There were meetings at Bishop DeFalco Retreat Center, at the Black Cultural Heritage Center, at Kids Inc., at the Senior Citizen Center, and of course a number of downtown locations. A more comprehensive list he pulled together includes over 200 public meetings held by the various entities represented here today: Tiers, DAI, LGC. Oh, I did something wrong. there's been much said in recent days about the lack of transparency in the process of developing and implementing the strategic plan for downtown. I'm reminded of a story of the preacher who, in order to illustrate his own insignificance in God's grand plan, turned to the impressive stained glass window behind him and pointed a little corner where a piece was missing. And he compared himself to that missing piece. After the service, an elderly woman approached him and, commenting on the sermon, said, "Don't worry, preacher. I think you're a real pain. To have, come on, help me out here. I think you're a real pain." It's a play on words. To have participated in the opportunities to view development of the plan and process and help share it would have been a real pain and likely a full-time job. But the opportunity has clearly been there. These meetings indicated there was generally strong support. Now, I don't have a mustache to compare with Steve Harvey's, but I can say, and the survey says, 93% of respondents said downtown revitalization effort was very important. 93%. Let's see, are we on? I need to be on slide 8. Can you help me out there? Thank you. From these meetings, goals for the strategic plan began to develop. A long list of possibilities and opportunities were consolidated, duplications were eliminated, and priorities were established. Participants said they not only wanted to maintain downtown as the financial and government and civic center of Amarillo and the Panhandle, they wanted to develop and attract urban lifestyle living. Specifically mentioned were 400 to 600 new housing units. Fitting hand in glove. There we go. One more, please. Fitting hand in glove with the other urban living, participants wanted downtown to be an entertainment and retail center and offer cultural amenities with dining, nightclubs, events, and specifically they mentioned 6 to 10 new restaurants or nightclubs. Significantly, the plan called for the development of one or more quality hotels to support the Civic Center. We can point with pride to the Courtyard by Marriott and the Fisk building, operated successfully by Newcrest Partners, as at least partially responsive to this goal. And the convention hotels Newcrest and the city are partnering on is the next step. And I'll offer more on that later. The plan way back then called for urban design standards addressing lighting, parks, signs, etc. They didn't offer specifics of the plan, but recognized that to be successful, downtown would have to have a look and a feel. Thank you. By the way, this isn't unique to downtown. As you know, there are standards for new businesses throughout the city, and in some cases, those standards are even more rigorous. The planners wanted to see more educational opportunities downtown. While it's a subject I will not try to address here, the notion of having an enhanced WT campus in downtown Amarillo goes back at least to this plan. The goal included not just nightclubs, something important for college students, and restaurants, but family-oriented venues and events. Significantly, the plan called for consideration of a minor league ballpark and associated mixed entertainment venue. That's a quote from the plan. At this time, the catchy MPEV acronym had not yet been coined. That's another joke. I've frequently heard that the plan for a ballpark downtown was to be attributed to DAI or Wallace Bajali or Melissa Daly. And it's worth noting that this 2008 plan floated the idea before DAI had even been created, and before Melissa had been hired, and before Wallace Bajali had been engaged. Now I've really messed it up. I'm on number 12. Well, we'll let you imagine what might have been there. The plan called for police and security programs, shared use parking lots, and rehabilitation of historic buildings. Any of this sound familiar? The plan examines in great detail changing demographics. 25% of our population are baby boomers, I confess, and 25% are millennials, whose studies seem to clearly demonstrate are seeking urban living. The plan offers convincing research, evidence called psychographics, that indicate our citizens aren't exempt from these trends. I'll deviate for a moment from the slides to share my personal experience with urban living. My daughter has chosen to make her home in Chicago, and in fact, later this month, I'm going to be hosting a wedding there. I look at her choice to live in Chicago as reflecting the Gideon Toll research, indicating it is a national trend. Now, I marvel at her choice, and I ask myself, is that big C on the Chicago Cubs cap I dutifully bought, does that stand for cold or congestion or crime or cost? Why would my little Lizzie choose to live in the big city? Well, simply, it's the amenities. It's the theater, the restaurants, the clubs. The fact her job is, as she tells me, in walking distance. Now, mind you, that's a 45-minute walk. And we're not going to become Chicago, and we don't want to become Chicago. But I believe that this generation, who research says chooses where they want to live and then finds a job to support that choice, that Amarillo, with all of our advantages and with the disadvantages we're missing, like cold, congestion, crime, and cost, that with only a small fraction of the amenities available in Chicago or Austin or Oklahoma City, we could carry the day and recruit young engineers to fill that new XL building and CPAs so I wouldn't have to work so hard. And even more significant than recruiting young people to our city, we've got to raise those we've got to retain those we've raised and educated. On the other end of the demographic scale, my wife and I look longingly at the potential of living downtown. Hopefully, we'll get that done before the memory care facility is necessary. There's one currently being built, but I can't remember where it is or who's building it. And I'm thinking with the new developer purchasing the Barfield building, that if they're able to move forward with their plans to offer condos, that they'll be ready about the same time I get my attic cleaned out. It's assuming I start tomorrow. Let's see, I'm on, forward please. I'm on number 14. I've probably beaten the urban resurgence to death with the last slide, but suffice it to say it is less expensive for cities to maintain densely populated areas than sparsely populated ones. You don't believe me, ask the Detroit city manager. And Gideon Toll further demonstrates this with lots of statistics and other evidence. The report cites evidence that immigrants in the past are finding their way to urban areas as well. One more, please. Making downtown attractive requires some forethought. Urban dwellers are looking for walkability, historic preservation, and open space. This report provides with great specificity the details of what their research indicates will make a downtown work. One more, please. Some of the resurgence in upper living is financially driven. The result of financing incentives like historic tax credits. I mentioned earlier the cost reductions for the city due to lack of a need for new infrastructure investment, and a rejection of some of the long-held suburban not in my backyard syndrome attitudes, which didn't welcome mixed-use development like you'll see downtown. One more slide, please. Changing economics and shrinking need for office buildings, which is making them available for conversion to residential use, think Barfield building again, is a trend worldwide. It's estimated by 2050, 75% of the world's population will be in urban settings. Now, do I believe 75% of Amarillo will be downtown? Certainly not. Many of us prefer the don't fence me in, give me land, lots of land that we've grown up with. But I believe significantly more of our number, both young and old, will be trading in the traditional housing we've seen here for 70 years for something different. One more, please. My introduction to DAI coincided with DAI issuing requests for proposals for a quality operator to build a convention hotel adjacent to the Civic Center with all the amenities modern conventioneers demand. The responses to those RFPs, to put it kindly, were lukewarm. In retrospect, if I'd carefully studied the strategic action plan, my surprise would have been eliminated. The Gideon Toll report documents that the economics of convention hotels are more challenging than the rest of the market. Consultants indicated in their report that convention hotels are 20% more expensive to build and may have to discount room rates as much as 30% due to the nature of their clientele being groups with negotiating power. Well, not without controversy, I'm told that in recent decades, almost without exception, convention hotels built in smaller markets include some element of a public-private partnership. The economics are such that the hotels aren't viable without them. I'm further led to believe that as public-private partnerships go, the incentives we've offered are on the low end of what typically makes these deals happen. I've learned in the last few hours of the opposition some of our other hotel-motel operators have to these incentives, and frankly, I understand and respect their concerns. Personally, I expect the rising tide of convention and entertainment demand to raise all boats and ultimately benefit all of the hospitality business in Amarillo. On short notice, I couldn't find evidence of that to either support or refute my opinion in the strategic plan or other research. However, I think a speaker later today will address that topic. One more slide, please. This slide entitled Ballpark Recommendation shows an illustration of downtown with a ballpark in the middle of it. I showed this only to illustrate again that the idea of a ballpark downtown has been bandied about since before the introduction of the first iPhone. This isn't a new idea, and it wasn't foisted upon us by some out-of-town developer. One more, please. Our strategic action plan offered 3 action steps. Hire someone to implement the plan, and the plan offered specifics of what to look for in a candidate. In Amarillo, we took the additional step aimed at overseeing progress of the plan and created DAI in 2008. Establish a public improvement district, a PID. Adopt downtown urban design standards. Now, it's noteworthy that this group with a bias for action took action and hired a person with the appropriate skill set. Melissa Daly was expediently hired. The design standards, after much cussing and discussing, were implemented, and after an election, in my mind, effectively affirmed them. The PID hasn't become a reality, but as recently as this Monday, a PID for Polk Street beautification was discussed in the DAI board meeting. Efforts to continue to try to find the right mix of attributes to make one a reality will go on. My experience, having moved such a comprehensive plan this far, given the conservative nature of our community, is remarkable. A consultant that assisted with our application for the Tiger Grant for the Polk Street Complete Streets project confirmed that it's his experience, which is obviously much broader than mine, that we've come a long way in a comparatively short period of time. Well, you'll be relieved to know, all of you, especially the city manager, will be relieved to know that I'm out of slides and will very shortly be out of words. As one who's been close to the implementation of this plan for 5 years, I can testify that it hasn't always been pretty, but it has a large and diverse group of cooks in the kitchen. The strategic action plan has been and continues to be painstakingly evaluated. Perhaps most importantly, it hasn't been just talked about, it's been systematically implemented. There are moments when I think the strategic action plan is quite bold. Then I remember those brave souls who settled this inhospitable land, the tenacious ones who stayed through the Dust Bowls, and the innovative ones like my father-in-law, Ray Vahue, who figured out how to revive Amarillo following the closing of the Air Force Base. And I think maybe our plan is pretty timid in comparison. But then they didn't have social media to respond to. So I acknowledge that this isn't a perfect plan, but my business partner, who occasionally quotes Voltaire, reminded me, do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We're not going to come up with a perfect plan, and what we're trying to accomplish is too complicated and far-reaching for everyone to understand, appreciate, much less embrace. Again, I'm very grateful, sincerely so, to you folks for taking your precious time to hear how we got where we are today. I urge you to study these proposals carefully, ask tough questions, run the figures again and again. You were elected to show that diligence, discretion, and wisdom on our behalf. Make your mark on the plan, then when the time comes, vote to move it forward. I fear we won't have this opportunity again, at least in my lifetime. As a baby boomer, I'm not particularly proud of what my generation has done for the world. This may be a small way to honor our parents, the greatest generation, and pay forward to our children and grandchildren a better quality of life. We need to leave them something more than just a low tax rate and low bonded indebtedness. We need to bequeath to them a city they can be proud of. In the midst of the current atmosphere of recriminations, accusations, and allegations, I'll close with the words of a great Amarilloan, Dr. Winford Moore. Returning to Amarillo, he said, "Amarillo means the joy and excitement of seeing an entire city come together, each giving what he or she can to meet any call and challenge for the good of the advancement of the city and area." Thank you for your time and attention.
Sam, thank you for a job well done. Any questions of the folks here at the head table? Commissioner?
You know, I'm going to seriously take that it's okay for us to ask questions. I know you're on a schedule, but I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
And I tried to follow your 40 minutes talk, and it was very interesting. So if I heard you right, the SAP was developed in 2008. Is that correct?
Completed in 2008, started in 6 and worked on late 6 and 7 and issued, I believe, in 2008.
Okay. Now, I was trying to listen carefully, but it did not appear that and you used the word, the acronym MPEV was a part of that 2008 when it was originally completed. Did I hear you
No,
right?
I think it was like that slide with.
Well, you said baseball, but I don't think
okay. Well, in the phrase they used, it was not MPEV, but a multi-use.
I think it's a family-friendly venue.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find the exact words.
Okay. So I was just, yeah. And then thirdly, you know, we talked about the convention hotels, and you mentioned about that. So why was not the convention hotels? Why was not the expansion of the convention center on the table? Do you have any?
Somebody asked me that the other day, and I phrased it that we started. It's like in a personal budget. We started with remodeling the bathroom, and next year we're going to look at building that new den. We felt like those fit together, the three-legged stool or the elements of that catalyst work together. And I think there's going to be some discussion of what's involved in renovation of the Civic Center, but it's a much bigger price tag than the building the MPEV.
Okay.
I might just add to that, it was a 10-year plan, so it's not a forever plan for downtown, with the anticipation that it'd be updated in 10 years. So that was 10 years of goals.
Councilor, the specific answer to your question on what the plan said, it's mentioned in 2 places under development goals. In one place it says, attract family-friendly venues, example, cinema complex or minor league ballpark. And then in further down it says, consider downtown for a minor league ballpark and associated mixed-use entertainment venue. So in specific response to your question of the goals, those were the 2 places it was listed.
And what I wrote down is that was studied from 2005 to 2008, and we adopted it in 2008 as a city.
Additional questions of Sam?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. All right. Our next speaker will speak to us regarding the tax increment reinvestment zone, which was a tool that was implemented early on in this process to be used for the development of the heart of our city. Here now to present that information is the chairman, the current chairman of the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1, right? Isn't technically Tax Reinvestment Zone number 1, Scott Bentley. Scott is the Amarillo Market President of First United Bank and a great member of our community. Scott.
Thank you, Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to be here this morning, and I am going to talk about the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1. There is only one at this point, as referred to earlier. I have served on the tiers. I'm going to refer to the Tax Reinvestment Zone as tiers throughout this talk. I've served on the tiers board since March of 2011 and filled the unexpired term of the mayor when he got off. And I've served as chair since just earlier this year when I filled the term of Richard Brown when he stepped down as chair. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the mechanics of the tiers, how it works, how it came to be, and then I'm going to talk about what we have done and what we plan to do within the tiers. So let's talk about the mechanics first and how it actually works. Tax increment financing, what is it? It's an economic development tool that captures the increase in property tax revenue that is created by development within a defined area, in our case the tiers, and invest those funds in other public areas for the improvement or development projects within that zone. It's initiated and created by the city. It's created by petition, a minimum of 50% of the property owners within that zone. It was created in December of 2006 through an ordinance of the City of Amarillo in accordance with the Tax Incentive Financing Act. Tiers number 1 will terminate no later December 31st, 2036. So how does it work? The base value was determined in 2006 when the tiers was formed, and the base value of those properties within that tiers was $139 million. It was determined by the existing taxable value of the real estate within the tiers at that time. The taxing entities continue to receive the value of the property throughout the life of that 30-year zone. So the $139 million, the property owners continue to receive the taxes on that amount throughout that 30 years. The value of the properties today within that tier zone is $194 million. So it's a $55 million increase since 2006. The TIF, or the increment, is the incremental increase in real estate property taxes revenue above the base year, resulting in the increase in the taxable value of the property. So, as I said, it started out 139, it's 194 today, $55 million increase. So the tiers receives the increment of that $55 million at that tax rate. So, for example, in 2014, the tiers received $600,000 in revenue from that increment, from that increase. The boundaries of the tiers are approximately this: I-40 to the south, railroad tracks to the east, railroad tracks to the north, and Washington to the west. As I stated, it was created in 2006 with 6 partners: City of Amarillo, Carter County, Amarillo College, Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District, Amarillo Hospital District, and AISD. I might note that AISD is prohibited from state law from contributing to the tiers, although they do have a representative on the board. When tiers was being considered, there were many, many meetings held throughout the city to educate, to inform, to answer questions about what tiers was, how it works. A lot of people in this room spend a lot of hours in meetings throughout the city. Potter County, especially because they are the largest stockholder in the tiers, approximately 54% of the money actually comes from Potter County. So there was a considerable amount of time and effort spent meeting with these representatives in each precinct to educate them on the benefits of the tiers. Tiers number 1 has 10 board members. The City of Amarillo appoints 3 of them and appoints the chairman. Potter County appoints 3 board members. Each other of the taxing entities that I spoke of appoint one board member. So the city does not control the board, as it only appoints 3 of the board members. The Tiers Board is charged with making recommendations to the city concerning administration, management, and operation of the tiers. The board's fundamental purpose is to encourage economic development or redevelopment within the tiers that wouldn't occur otherwise. And while tiers revenues can be pledged to support debt, only the city can issue debt and pledge tiers revenues. Also, the City Council created tiers and has final approval authority on the budget and all tiers projects. So how does tiers help? It helps in assist in implementing the overall downtown redevelopment goals discussed in the downtown strategic plan that Sam just spoke about. Reposition downtown as a mixed-use urban center, strengthen employment and economic base by creating diversity of mixed uses, and by eliminating blight, reduce unsafe conditions, improve public infrastructure, revitalize neighborhoods and business areas. Now, the specific goals within the tiers when it was formed were 4. There's 4 of them. Hotel development. The goal was to create 1,200 rooms over 30 years, 300 rooms which would be within the first 7 years. And with the Marriott that's already been established and the new hotel that's on the horizon, that goal would be complete. There was a goal for urban residential, 2,100 rooms within 30 years. 600 would be within the first 7. You know we are behind on that one. Office, retail, and commercial of 1.6 million square feet over 30 years. Of this, 300,000 would be retail. Estimated that 25 to 30% would be developed within the first 7 years. And then the 4th would be a family event venue, as we're calling it today, the MPEV. So the 4 specific goals of the tiers when it was formed: hotel development, urban residential, office, retail, and commercial, and the family entertainment venue. So the process to receive tiers assistance, shall I say. A pre-application meeting with the staff, submittal of the TIF application, project review and consideration by the Tiers Board, then project review and consideration by the Powder County Commission, I should say, and the project review and consideration by the City Council, who has the final authority. So what tools can tiers use? Well, there's 2 of them. They have direct grants and tax rebates. We can rebate up to 90% of the taxes paid. And the difference, the 10% difference, is retained by tiers for additional projects. Let me give you an example. If $100,000 or $1,000 in taxes is paid by an entity, tiers can rebate up to 90%, or in this example, $900 back to that entity, and then tiers would keep $100 to go into additional projects. So here's some examples that we've done so far throughout the tiers. These are the grants I'm going to speak of first. Powder County Courthouse, $943,000. Amarillo College parking lot, $50,000. Downtown Athletic Club, $42,000. Vineyard Manor, $48,000. Polk Street United Methodist Church, $203,000. Overhead construction, $50,000. And those were all for streetscaping. And we've also done a couple of tax rebates so far. Toot and Totem, a 90% rebate up to 20 years, not to exceed $494,000. And the Fisk Building, the Marriott, 90% rebate, not to exceed 20 years, or $1.6 million. Also, as Beth talked about, the Tiers has an agreement with Center City to fund up to $150,000 annually for streetscape projects. Applicants approved by the Center City Board for the facade grants could potentially receive up to $50,000 per year from the Tiers for property for streetscape improvements. So those are the projects that we've done, and let me talk about just a minute about the upcoming projects that we have already approved. The XL building, or SPS building, we have approved a 90% rebate on taxes for 18 years. The 18 years coincides with the expiration of the tiers in 2036. An estimated taxes to be rebated on this project are $469,000 per year. The TxDOT grant And this is the grant for streetscaping that goes along southeast 11th Street, along Buchanan to 5th Street, and then 2 blocks east along 6th Street. Tiers contributed, or will contribute when it comes to fruition, $385,000 in order to receive $1.5 million in funds from TxDOT for streetscaping along that corridor. And then, of course, the $2.7 million has been committed to downtown catalyst projects, i.e. the hotel, parking garage, and the MPEV. These funds were earmarked for streetscaping as well. This, along with the $500,000 from Center City that Beth talked about, will result in the $3.2 million needed to cover the streetscaping of all these 3 projects together. Approximately one half is to be spent on the hotel parking garage and the other one half on the MPEV. And also, Tiers has approved a 90% rebate on the new hotel to be built. There have been many inquiries of Tiers funds over the years. Last 3 years in particular, we try to be good stewards with our money, and we knew that this big hotel parking garage MPEV was coming up, so we've been kind of hoarding and holding back our $2.7 million since July of 2012 for these catalyst projects. There is an agreement with the LGC that these projects will conform with the downtown design standards, and these funds are to be used for streetscaping for those 3 catalyst projects in particular, the hotel parking garage and the MPEV. So the streetscaping won't begin until the fall of 2016 or approximately thereabouts. So the funds won't be needed till then. So the source of funding for those will come from a couple sources. We do currently have the cash on hand right now. We have about $3.1 million in the Tiers funds, and that is approximately what we have in commitments. We have $2.7 million for the downtown project and the $385,000 TxDOT grant that I spoke of. If for some reason there was a funding shortfall, the city has a bonding capacity, as I talked about earlier, and also Tiers has a standby agreement with the city, if needed, that we could borrow money from the city up to $1.5 million. The purpose is to assist Tiers with the obligation to fund the $2.7 million if needed. Like I said, we do have the money on hand today, but if there come other projects that we felt like we needed to fund, then we could always tap into those other sources. That's the conclusion of my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Questions? Mr. Bentley?
I don't have a question in particular, but just a follow-up comment as it relates to the strategic plan and the tiers. And so certainly keep me honest, Mr. Lovelady, as it relates to the strategic plan. Councilmember Demerson, you asked the question of the family venue, ballpark. If I remember correctly, in that 2008 strategic plan, there were also 2 site locations presented in that plan, roughly 3rd and Buchanan as a possible option, and then the current Coca-Cola property, which is what is currently slated at. So if I remember correctly, there were 2 options. So in all fairness to the public comment that I have heard at LGC and Tiers as a public participant, question I have heard is, why a new convention? Why not the Herring Hotel and or expansion of the Civic Center and a potential option 1? Now, I wasn't a part of the 2008 strategic plan, so I can't speak to one direction or the other, but in all fairness to the comment that I've personally heard and the options that were included in the strategic plan, I did want to be transparent with that as well. So certainly, I don't know if you have anything to add, Mr. Okay.
Commissioner, I might say that the 2008 plan was really largely at a 30,000-foot level in terms of concepts and ideas and very nonspecific in terms of particular location. That became refined, if you will, with the adoption of, on August 23rd, 2013, when the city charged the LGC to move forward with the particulars of what we now know as a catalyst project, which included the locations at that point. So the specific location was something that evolved between that 2008 period and the 2011 period when the city commission at that time gave the green light for implementation.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Just wanted to speak that there were a couple of options presented and really give voice to some of that public comment that I have heard through this process.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Marcy.
Sorry, it's me again. So since 2006, when Tiers was created, and you defined the geographical perimeters. Can you tell me any project that Tiers has supported, has promoted west of downtown proper? Since we go to, as I recall, to Washington Street, is that correct, on the west?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me any project or the projects that has gone beyond downtown?
Councilman, I cannot off the top of my head, but I can't tell you of any applications west of downtown.
Okay.
I don't think there have been any.
Okay. And then just so I can have it clear in my mind, could you restate the mission of your mission statement or a mission
Sure.
of Tiers?
To implement the goals as discussed in the Downtown Strategic Action Plan, reposition downtown as a mixed-use urban center, strengthen employment and economic base by creating diversity of mixed uses, and eliminating blight, reduce unsafe conditions, improve public infrastructure, revitalize neighborhoods and business areas.
Let me ask too, Gary, do you remember, I recall 3 plans being presented for positioning the MPEV, the ballpark. One was discounted pretty quick and put away. The other 2 were studied pretty thoroughly.
Right. There was, again, the 2008 plan for illustration purposes, I believe, more than anything else, designated a couple of spots. One north of where we are today, one on the, interesting, we're talking about west, one on the kind of the western side of the central business district, in addition to the possibilities in and around 6th and Buchanan. And I might, in response, partial response, Commissioner Demerson, to your question, the specific roles and responsibilities of this tax increment reinvestment zone, as with any, are defined in state statute in terms of the roles and responsibilities of such entities in the state of Texas.
I just have one question. We had a couple numbers thrown around. I just want to make sure I understand. You said we have about $3.2 million for the MPEV for the parking garage. Is that streetscaping? Is that what that money's dedicated to?
Yes.
That includes the hotel as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
those 3 projects and combined would be that total.
Okay.
That's right.
Other questions?
Councilman, that's not the commitment of the tiers, but the total projected expense of the streetscaping is that number. Tiers commitment is 2.7, and the difference is the 500,000 from Center City.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, good. I was just talking about the pool that he had said. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Marcus, could you please provide for us the state statute reg on the mission for the tiers, please?
Certainly can.
Thanks.
Be glad to get you that. And that same state law requires that the boundaries be defined. You asked about projects outside or west of Washington Street. That would be unlawful for this current Tiers 1. It would require the creation of another Tiers with a different geographical boundary. And so we'll be glad to get you that copy of that statute.
The boundaries that Mr. Bentley, I believe you said the boundaries were the railroad track on the north, the railroad track on the east, Washington on the west, and what was it, I-40 on the south. So, Council, this is, when I said west of downtown, I mean west of downtown proper, but inside of the western boundary, which is
I misunderstood your
Washington.
question then.
All
But we'll
right.
get you a copy of that statute.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Now we're going to move on and discuss the downtown standards, which again were mentioned and called for in that 2008 plan. And I'm pleased to introduce Chan Davidson to make that presentation. Chan, a downtown property owner, has been involved in downtown issues maybe your entire life, Chan. I don't know, a long time. Chan is the the owner and CEO of Davidson Oil, and is the son of Joe Ted, who was one of our founding fathers in terms of this downtown effort. Chan, thank you for being here.
Well, and thank you all. It truly is a pleasure to be here. I was honored and humbled when I was asked to speak on this matter, and excited to be in front of the citizens of Amarillo to help support this endeavor and help move it forward and provide information. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I want to give a little bit of background about myself. I am a local businessman. I was born and raised here. My father, Joe Ted, was born and raised here as well, so we've been around for quite a while. I appreciate Mr. Lovelady's comment about my father. I hadn't thought of that as I prepared for this presentation today, but that is a key element and one that is close to my heart as well, of moving this project forward. He was here early on, and I have to say it was very difficult to get him on board initially. He was not convinced that we could do what we have done so far, and the vision that is set out before us. He was he just could not be convinced that would happen. But we converted him over time. He then sat on some boards, as was mentioned, and he also invested his personal money by buying some of the derelict properties around town and revitalizing them himself. So we won him over, and it would be nice to finish the project as he had envisioned early on. As I mentioned, I was born and raised here. I left to attend college. When I returned back, there were two things that I said I would never do. One was I would never come back to Amarillo, and number two was I would never work for my father. And I violated both of those principles that I had established for myself. But I'm very happy today that I did that. I have a deep love for Amarillo, and I remain here and am raising my family here. My first real introduction into downtown was I'm also a property owner of two properties that are on Polk Street. That's important to know because that's a big part of my history. My father owned a building that was boarded up and was surrounded by weeds when I arrived back from college. I thought it was the coolest building I'd ever seen. He was tired of dealing with it. He said, if you'll take the note payment over at the bank, you can have it, but it's yours. I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. And I gleefully took it over, remodeled it, and moved in. And this is a property just off First and Polk Street by the railroad tracks, and I lived there for several years. A neat thing, as was mentioned in previous discussions or previous presentations, was after 5 o'clock, downtown was completely deserted at this time. This was probably in 1992, 93. And my claim to fame at that time was I would go rollerblading after 5 o'clock. You could just, the whole downtown area was yours. And I would rollerblade and I would dream. I went by all the buildings. I examined all the properties. I thought, what can I do? This is an incredible opportunity here. What can I do to try to drive some interest? What can I do to get something started? I found out that there was a group called Center City of Amarillo that had been formed a few years prior. I was very excited to join their ranks and get involved there. And they were eager to have someone. At that time, I was 23 years old, 24 maybe, and they were excited to have someone young that was wanting to do something big. My next project, I moved down to 7th and Polk. I conned some of my other family members, not my father. He would not get on board, but I conned some other family members into investing with me. We purchased a building in the 700 block of Polk Street and revitalized that. And a lot of people thought we were nuts. We were the only thing going on down there. There was a few banks that were still anchored in downtown Amarillo, and there were attorneys' offices were typically the two things that you would find. So we revitalized this space, put a restaurant in, and leased it to an operator, and then we ran an antique store out of the other half of the building. This part is important because as we were developing this property, we realized that there were no design standards. We as we were moving to the exterior of the building out onto the sidewalk, we knew we wanted trees, we knew we wanted proper lighting, but we didn't know where to put them. We didn't have a plan. We approached the city, and we found out that there were relatively few guidelines. They were just central business district code requirements, but nothing specific. I met with Center City, and actually that group decided to design their own. They said, well, why don't we create a document and put it together and to help future developers when they come down so they have some sort of guideposts to navigate their way through the process. So that document was created several years later after our project was completed, but we saw the need. I mean, as a young developer doing a relatively small project, I saw the need for some sort of guidebook and standards to be put in place. So we just knew that intuitively. We found that actually, if you could, oh, I can do that here, right? Okay, so to give you a little bit of this process of how the standards actually came to be, the ones that we have today. As I said, in 1999, the Center City drafted their own version, and it was on a voluntary basis for any developers. If anybody started doing a project, we would race over there and give them our handbook here, which had all these guidelines and said, we'd love for you to follow this. But they were voluntary. So, and we knew that too, that after we saw a few projects being developed, you had people adhering to various standards. They were placing trees in various, configurations, et cetera. It wasn't feeling very cohesive. It wasn't working that well. So as part of the 2008 Downtown Strategic Action Plan, a recommendation came out of there that we needed design standards. I mean, it's common throughout a lot of the central business districts throughout the country that these design standards are there. It helps developers, it protects property values, and it really helps the pedestrian is what they're mainly designed for. So in 2008, the American Institute of Architects drafted those standards. A local chapter did that, so they kind of helped give us the blueprint, the basics. We took that document, and then a committee was formed in 2009, and that committee was composed of folks from DAI, the City of Amarillo, Center City, and property owners, of which I was one of those. I was asked to sit on that and help draft those standards. Public meetings were held in 2009 and 2010, so we had lots of input from the public. We took some of those comments. Some of them made it into the document. Some of those comments, made it to where some things came out of the documents. But we were looking for a holistic document that was supported by the city that could really help developers propel forward and start creating this cohesive feeling that you need to have in a central business district or in a downtown area. Those standards were adopted by the City Council in 2010, and shortly thereafter, we had there was a bit of a groundswell of opposition. People suggesting that the standards were too restrictive and that nobody in the zone that was covered by the standards, that no one in the zone really wanted the standards. We knew that to be completely false. We formed an organization called Keep Amarillo Strong, which was designed to essentially educate the public. I mean, our goal was we knew there was misinformation out there, similar to what I feel that we're experiencing today, and that's why I'm so appreciative of this meeting today, to get the facts on the table so that we can all make very educated choices and decisions. But that measure was put on the ballot. They were trying to repeal the design standards, but it failed. And so our position won, and we were passed with the 70% margin at the ballot box. So we were pleased to see that. And we knew we had canvassed the people in the zone, and that's that geographic boundary that's governed by the standards. We canvassed, we went house to house and talked to everybody, property owners, and created this wonderful, huge map showing the people that were for the standards and the people that were against. And you couldn't look at the map and not determine that obviously there was very much support for the people that were going to be influenced the most by having standards there. So it was wonderful that the city supported that. The voters of Amarillo supported that measure in such a strong manner. And it's important to note that modifications were done over the years between 2011 and 2014. It shows that it's a flexible document. We try to clarify it. We try to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the community. And so it gets tweaked along the way. And modifications were added and adopted again in 2014. Why should we have standards at all? I think it's been previously noted, too, that we're governed by standards all over the city, and no matter where you live, there's all sorts of requirements and standards. And what we found was that we were just lacking one in the central business district. There just was almost nothing there because development had stagnated, nothing was going on, and so there didn't seem to be a pressing need. But as we were encouraging more and more developers to come down and putting these programs in place, we realized you're going to need to have some sort of standard to kind of keep things somewhat organized. And downtown is a very unique environment. It's high density. You've got lots of activity. As more and more bike paths come on, you got pedestrians, you got vehicle traffic, you've got bikes, you've got a need for trash receptacles, et cetera. And all these things, it's important to have a cohesive plan and to be able to lay these things out and encourage more pedestrian traffic. And we want people to come downtown, feel comfortable. They need to feel a sense of place. And you get all of these elements happen in our downtown area. Lots of activity going on there. There's mixed-use developments. This photograph is a building. We no longer office there, but we were in the upstairs of this, and down below is the Crush restaurant. So you've got restaurants that are right next to where people live, which are right next to where people work. And so, having this a sense of place is very, very important. And we wanted to be the environment to be very enticing to pedestrian traffic. It's just so critical that if we're going to bring people down, they can easily navigate the streets. They feel that the lighting is adequate, that they understand where trash receptacles are, where park benches are. They know that it's very clearly defined. As you look down the street, your eye is drawn down, and it feels comfortable to move that way because you can see elements of the streetscape and just the design in general. At a high level to address the design standards, what they do address is, for example, the width of the sidewalks. You need continuity in that. There's nothing worse. Back in my rollerblading days, I learned that firsthand. The sidewalks would go from 8 feet to 4 feet to rock to asphalt and then dirt and then back to 8 feet, and it was, it makes it very hard to navigate. On rollerblades or on foot. So again, we're looking for consistency and normalcy for pedestrian traffic. That does include landscaping. Trees are a vital component to separating the pedestrians from the vehicular traffic. It creates a nice buffer where people, when they're walking down the street, they feel that comfort of a large item to buffer the two of them. They're also visually appealing, and they provide shade, et cetera, for the outdoor restaurants, et cetera. Building edge, this is something else that the design standards address, and it's the block that we're on, which I maybe failed to mention. The name of the building that we own is the Marazon building in the 700 block of Polk Street, and that block is unique in that the building edge is intact from 7th to 8th Street, and that's one of the few, if only, streets that are still that way. We've demolished buildings and pulled them right out of the middle of blocks and created parking lots. And those things are not conducive to, enhancing the walkability of the downtown area. When you're walking down, it's very nice to have that building edge continuous. Otherwise, if someone sets their building back, say 30 feet, you kind of round a corner and you're not sure if you're at the end of the street. You're not sure what's down there. The lighting is probably poor. So the standards are put in place to just eliminate a lot of that from going on. And then, of course, it has a sign component as well. That any signs that are going in the downtown area are covered under that. The standards as well. What that does not address, which was very important, is anything you're doing inside your building is purely yours. Anything you want to do with your land. Code compliance issues are not dealt with in that manner. Those are handled through the city, through the normal course of business. Demolition is not covered in the standards either, and nor is architectural style. And of course, we invite all sorts of architectural styles. The color's not dictated, materials typically are not dictated, nothing, our goal is to bring developers into the downtown. And we feel like this document has been a real benefit to, enhancing that. So the architectural diversity is always very good. We like having modern buildings next to the traditional historical, it makes for an interesting place to be and an interesting place to stay. And you find those in downtowns all across the country. Promoting the economic development, we always felt and know that is a key component as well. And I know I felt that as a property owner was, hey, if I'm going to spend, my money to do some of these things, how am I assured that my neighbors are going to, continue what I've done as they move down the streetscape? And I know especially for people that come in and spend, millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to come in. That's something we heard constantly was that they want to know that that there are urban design standards, and they usually get a copy of our book and they get to review it, and they want to know that others will be projects that go on around them, that they're going to adhere to similar standards. And so they know that when their employees, for example, when they go out for lunch, that, the streetscape just doesn't end at their corner, that it continues on to the next and the next and the next. And that is important. They want to, if they're going to spend that kind of money, they want to know that that there's some, that there's just not something completely unreasonable going on next door. People setting their building back, putting trees in the middle of the pathway, obstructing, it could be a myriad of things. So we know that is very important. We heard that from developers. This is a visual just of the design standards boundary, as was mentioned below. It's similar to others we've talked about. It's the boundaries, the railroad tracks on the north and the east, I-40 on the south, and Washington on the west. And just to touch on the process itself, we feel like it's a very simple process, very easy and not cumbersome. Most of the projects are reviewed administratively. If you're changing a sign or you're doing some small modifications or minor alterations to buildings, you simply go to the city and they can sign off on it. You don't even have to appear before the board. The board is designed primarily to review new construction and major alterations. So if someone's doing a major overhaul or a ground-up construction, they just want to see the project. They'll get copies of the plans, and they get to meet with the developers. And I've been a part of many of those meetings. Thought they were all very positive, very good. There are a lot of give and take in there. That sometimes, could you give a little bit on this, and I'll give you a little of this. So we both kind of got what we wanted. And the key takeaway here is that all of the cases that have come before, so all the applicants that have come before the Design Review Board have been approved, and none have been appealed. So that, I think, speaks for itself, that they're well received, well respected, and that the process is an efficient one and one that benefits the city as a whole. So with that closes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Chan, I have a question for you. I want to state that I had a great deal of respect for your father and did a lot of business with him over the years through my billboard deals and on lands he owned.
Thank you.
At dinner last night, you mentioned the Marathon building. At dinner last night, the owner of the Marathon Cafe approached me and told me that he had to move out of the building because his rent was raised 130% overnight. And then it was cheaper for him to go out to Southwest Amarillo and build a building. I'm just a little concerned. I mean, it's really none of my business what you charge your tenants. Well, I just want to make sure, we can have reasonable rents downtown to where local businesses can afford to do business downtown. Thank you.
Sure, I'd like to comment on that if I could. I find that surprising. I find that hard to believe because you can say what you will about me as a businessman, and this is my problem with some of my properties downtown. Is my goal personally has always been to create more activity downtown, and I have been below the typical rent rate for years and years and years, and always negotiated with my tenants trying to keep that very reasonable because I didn't want empty spaces and I wanted it to be full and vibrant. And our previous tenant stayed for, gosh, he was there 10 years, 15 years maybe. I mean, he consistently signed new contracts with me every time they came due. So
I guess at one point he just told me his rent went up 130% and he couldn't afford it anymore. I'm just telling you what the guy told me last night.
Yeah, that doesn't sound accurate, but it's been a while since he left. So.
Possibly over a period of time. I don't know that it went up that much, which happens in real estate. I get that. I just wanted to convey over what he told me last night.
I don't think. Yeah, I'd have to look into that, and I certainly will. I'd love to report back to you on my findings on that. I'd be happy to do that.
Mr. Davidson, I thank you for your comments, and I want to counter just saying that I have over 10 years talked to many of your tenants who applaud your efforts in downtown and appreciate your commitment to downtown and have had great relationships with you as a landlord. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question. I know that so I think the data is very clear on downtowns, revitalized downtowns and walkability and consistency of design and that urban density. I think this is very, very clear. And that's how these things succeed. I think later in the day we'll talk about what the stadium is and how that affects it. But this is pretty good. We've heard a couple times, though, about open space, green space, open areas. You mentioned it a little bit, too. Do you think that the standards we have now or the plan going forward gives us those kind of spaces? Because we don't really have a lot of that downtown right now for people to kind of congregate.
I may defer. I don't know if it speaks directly to creating open space. I mean, it's more about elements of, how we handle parking lots and trees and those type of things. But
well, I guess I've been asked the standards that we put in place, which are making things look beautiful. On Polk Street, we have some things happening that are pretty nice. Do you think have you seen that those engage people to walk more, to be more active in the environment, from your experience of being down there?
Well, certainly, but I have to say that I've seen it from going from a desolate, boarded up, mess to what it is today. And I know I'm the type of guy, too, that I get out in the evenings and we drive. We like to cruise around, and we'll come down to Polk Street, and I'm amazed at how many people are congregating around that 7th and Polk corridor with those restaurants, those bars, and of course I officed right above Crush. And so we were always pleased that, we thought that our efforts were paying off. I mean, more and more people were coming downtown, spending their dollars there, and enjoying the space. So,
okay, yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at, is you've seen that and you've experienced there.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Davidson, question. You talked about the Design Standards Review Board. I want to ask you a little bit about that. Now, you said they don't, when people have issue, you said they come to the board, they don't have to go to the city. Is that a quasi-board outside of the city, or is that under the auspices of the city umbrella? Number one.
I'm not sure.
That's a city board.
Okay.
City board.
Appointed by the council.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
I think there was this question about green space.
Yeah, I was going to answer
the 2008 plan does speak to green space.
I think your question was about design standards and open space, and it really doesn't address parks and open space at all. And so a good example is the Pocket Park that just went in, and that just went through staff approval. So if there is a space that's designed for the public, the design standards certainly don't prohibit that and don't address it at all, but certainly something we would support.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I just, in the conversations, we're kind of talking around a couple of things, so I just wanted to kind of narrow that a little bit so we could really focus. Okay, thanks.
Additional
I
questions?
think one number that maybe helps there some, Commissioner. I think I understand what you're talking about in walkability, and we're a long way from being there. But for example, on the courthouse square that Beth just went to do, 700 people are probably going to be there today. And when we started out, it was a handful. So if you create the space, you certainly increase the likelihood that people will want to be there. But we're a long way from having a real walkable downtown.
Well, I agree. I actually, during our lunch break, I'm going over there because my daughter's singing. So go. But I agree with that, and it's really great when that happens.
Can you, I don't know if we can just do this at a high level, but can we remind everybody what the triggers are for the standards? I mean, because I think all along there have been some confusions as to what triggers it, what doesn't trigger it, and some people are saying, I just do something very minor, and then I've got to spend all this extra money. But what are in general the triggers that would, we talked about the things inside the house, inside the building doesn't require that. But in general, what are the triggers to having to implement design standards?
What triggers the standards is if you really do, the simple way of answering that is if you do anything you could see from the street. So the exterior of your building or the public right-of-way, the common question is what triggers streetscape? And actually that trigger is quite high. You have to have basically new construction, a new building to trigger that streetscape. So the threshold is high, and so all the streetscape that you see, almost all except for the Toot and Totem project, which is a new construction project, was voluntarily done. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. That was a great question. So it's not, when we looked at the area, which is a large area, we're not saying everything has to be implemented overnight for that.
No, it has to be triggered by the property owner.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Chan, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we have reached the point in time that it is lunchtime. Melissa, I think we're supposed to have pizza here for you board members and the council to be right back here. Melissa may have ordered a little bit of extra pizza. I don't know if she did. And if there is, you can bum some pizza back there. If not, I'm sure Beth would be happy to sell you whatever they're having over on the courthouse lawn.
There'll be about a dozen pizzas over on the side here if anybody wants any.
Okay, we will reconvene and move forward in about 30 minutes. So quick lunch break.